today I'm speaking with Emily. We met at a mom event. When was that?
Oh my God, October?
Yeah, it was rainy and not nice weather. So probably October. Yeah. So finally it's March. And now she is on the podcast just in time for April, which is Fertility Awareness.
April 24th to the 30th is Canadian Fertility Awareness Week.
Okay, perfect.
But we talk about it all April.
Yeah, really, we should just be talking about it all the time. And I was reading, so Emily has a beautiful article that she wrote in the Toronto Star, and I was reading it this morning, and so many things were going through my head, that's the story of my life. But I was thinking, part of the problem is that people don't talk enough about these topics when it comes to women's health, when it comes to pregnancy, labor, delivery, infertility. Nobody talks about it, because in my mind, when I was reading your article, I was trying to think about I wonder what supports they had in place because I know my sister went through a lot, and I was always just shocked that it's these very traumatic experiences and you're just kind of sent home. So anyways, so many things I wrote. This is my little paper. I was writing notes as I was reading.
It.
Yeah. So we will get into that. But I guess to start, we can chat about your story, because your story is incredible. And as we go through it, I might just kind of ask you questions here and there. So
I think the best place to start is in 2017, we welcomed our son, Ryder. He's 5.5. And we were just these blissful people that thought we're just going to have sex and make a baby. And when do we want and what gender and blah, blah, blah. And it all worked out exactly like that, minus a terrible delivery, but that's okay. He's here. And the fertility world and challenges to get pregnant was not on my radar.
Mm-hmm. Because I think I was reading, I don't know if it was in the Toronto Star article, but you initially thought in your life that you wouldn't even want kids. And I relate to that. When I was going through grad school and I was living on my own, and, I was I don't even want kids. I don't want to get married. But then similar to you found your person, and then it was aw, I want to make children with this person,
Oh my gosh. Yes. I was never the person that grew up that was I want a husband and I want 5 kids and blah, blah, blah. I was nah. I actually lived in New York for 5 years and as a professional dancer there. And I was that whole family world for me was not on my radar. But yeah, Evan and I met and I was this guy's kind of cool. I guess we could make a human with this person. And Evan really wanted kids. I will say that he probably would have had them much earlier than me, but I was building a PR career at the time. And yeah, again, I just felt whenever I wanted them, I could have them.
Yeah.
The idea that this could be a challenge in our lives was so far from my vocabulary and my world. And we also had an experience like that, which was that we got pregnant really fast. And anyways, we had 2 amazing years with Rye. And society says to us, well, the 2-year gap is coming. So think about having your second kid. And I have to say, and I know you feel like this too, I was shocked at how much I was into being a mom. I was oh my God, it's actually fun. It's hard, but there are things about it that are really fun. And I was into it. I'm way more into the mom thing than I expected myself to be. So I still think I'm in shock about that in itself. Anywho, we got pregnant again in 2019, again, really quickly. And because how easy my pregnancy was with Ryder, so easy, I ended up going to Spain 34 weeks pregnant for a friend's wedding. Wow. Because never thought something could happen.
Mm-hmm.
I I ended up going at around the 5.5 month, 6 month mark. We ended up going to Italy for a family trip when I was pregnant. And things kind of just, again, I think the education is so lacking, which was that I started to get symptoms when I was away that weren't great for, I chalked them up to secondary, like ligament stretching.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that time
Was
where
it
it's
like cramping and?
it was like the best. I couldn't really walk, but it felt like my like uterus was just growing.
Mm-hmm.
But it got to a place where like you kind of should be able to walk, and it just felt very bruised and like sensitive. It was off. I came home and I was like, this is just not like I'm just gonna get checked. And I will say, when I was getting checked, no part of me thought there still could be something wrong. I was so naive. I did like an internal, my cervix was closed. My doctor was like, you're fine, and kind of sent me home.
Is that all they did, was an internal?
They just did an internal.
Okay.
In my opinion, I personally think they should have done a urinary test, because what ended up happening, did you know they're taking them away?
No. What do you mean?
Yeah. I don't know if you remember, but I remember going to the OB when I was pregnant 6 years ago, and you would always take a urine test. Like you would always pee and they would be testing
like at
your
every
urine.
checkup?
I'd say like more or less. I
never did one. Well, maybe I have the worst memory, so I have to double check with my husband, because he's going to be like, yes, you did. So I don't know.
Well, they used to do them and they took them away, and I don't think they should. Just ask for urine tests. But basically, my water broke out of nowhere, like within 10 hours of coming home. And to make a very long story short, we ended up losing her from an external infection. Again, they found bacteria in the placenta, which ended up creating like a hole, and I lost fluid. And then obviously if you have no fluid, you're going to lose the baby. And that's sort of what happened. My water broke, and it just 2 days later, we ended up just blindsided in a delivery room.
So were you at home for those 2 days, or when your water broke, were you admitted to the hospital?
I was sent home.
Okay. So your water broke and they were like, okay, go home.
Yes. It was like, basically they were like, there's still fluid in there, and there's a very small chance that it could repair itself. So like basically go on bed rest. But they shouldn't have sent me home. I should have been on bed rest in the hospital, in my personal opinion. I think bed rest with like at the time Ryder was just shy of 2.5. Like it's just, anyways, I ended up going into labor at home and then coming in. And it was just an outer body experience. I've never understood when someone has said that before, other than this.
You probably you dissociated.
Oh yeah. Hardcore.
And so in my, when you tell me a story like this, I'm like, how is there not a team that exists in the healthcare system where it's just standard practice? When something like this is happening, you are now assigned to this team that is going to be there, to help you mentally, emotionally, physically, give you all the information that you need. You can ask questions. It blows my mind that people are just sent home. I don't understand.
You know, I have a lot of dreams for day one. This sits in it, but you go to the ER, and I think that's a big problem, because you are not prioritized at that time. And although I was moved up into triage at the time, it just they're not equipped for you. They don't have the time. They're not equipped. And
the thing is, all of this stuff, pregnancy, labor, delivery, complications with pregnancy, what you went through, it shouldn't even be in the same building.
Again, I have a lot of dreams for day one. Are you in my business plan?
Yeah, exactly. Like, it shouldn't even be in the same building because you're not, I didn't slice my finger in the, like, you know what I mean? It's a completely different situation and it requires a different kind of care. And the fact that it's just been like lumped in with medicine and like medical care is a huge problem.
Huge problem.
I have friends who have had like the most traumatic deliveries, and okay, you're rushed to the hospital, you have your baby, and then you're sent home. And it's like, like, where's the aftercare? And I don't just mean physical, but that is a problem too. But like, where is the support for people that go through these things? Like, it should be readily available and a part of our healthcare system.
Yes. And we named her Ruby. We delivered Ruby in the same ward as people that were delivering healthy live babies.
Like, I can't.
So that's another thing that, I'm hoping that will change in the future.
I can't even. I never see, that's something that I would have never even thought about.
The thing is like when something, again, when that happened with us, obviously we were in complete shock.
Yeah.
But we didn't have fertility issues at the time. So I didn't really appreciate what a miracle like baby making was. Like I kind of was like, this is horrible. Let me process this and figure this out. But when we're ready, we'll just have a baby again. Like it didn't feel like this massive journey was in front of us. And it was just a really weird time when it happened, actually, because it was at the end of 2019. And 2 weeks later, actually, my father passed away unexpectedly. So we were in this like bizarre blur of life. And then COVID hit. And so it was just this like, I when I talk about Ruby, I feel like part of me is always talking about my dad. Like they've muddled together for me so hard. And I remember that time in the sense of just thinking whenever we're ready, we'll be able to do it again. And that to me actually has been a bigger shock than that this has been our road than the circumstance in itself, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Now you find me 3.5 years later where we've done, you're actually catching me on my 4th round of IVF. I do like an egg retrieval tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
So we'll see when this episode airs. We'll see what happens. But we've done 3 rounds of IVF in 2021.
So, okay, I want to make this clear because I confuse this all the time.
Yes.
A round of IVF. See, in my mind, I was thinking that a round of IVF was when you had the embryo implanted. But a round is you do the injections, you get your body ready to ovulate, and then you go in, they remove, people are probably
eggs.
Listening to this and they're like, oh my God, like this is like the Coles Notes like version.
This is actually why it's so important to have for this conversation to not just be stuck in the fertility community. Because when I come onto podcasts that are fertility based, it's great because I'm talking about mindset and the work that I do, which is fine. But we cannot normalize this if we don't educate people that, if we don't educate people that aren't going through it. How can you support somebody? This is actually why with my clients right now, I've been trying to give more grace to their support group because their support group doesn't know. And why would they know? They're not subject to it. I just think it's a great conversation for us to have.
So yeah, the round is, so for example, my sister did a round of IVF. And so that was the egg retrieval. And then you're told how many eggs are healthy and viable that they can then try and create embryos with. And then they will do do they call it implanting?
Transfer.
A transfer for the healthy, viable embryos. And so some people can retrieve like a bunch of eggs, and some people can do a full round of IVF, which, keep in mind, this is a big deal. It's like multiple injections, it's hormones, it's like, it's a lot.
Money.
Oh, the money, like that's just a whole other, a lot of people can't even do this. So imagine if I think in Ontario, you get one free round of IVF, which is included in our healthcare system, which is great. But now you can go through that round of IVF and receive one embryo or none.
Yeah. Or you receive it and you do a transfer and then it doesn't actually implant.
You could literally get like 6 healthy embryos, go through the process of implanting every single one, and they don't work. They don't go through or whatever. So that is because here's my issue with so many things when it comes to women's health and like pregnancy and labor and delivery. The terminology is just so like flippant. It's just like, oh yeah, a round of IVF. And it's like, no, but do you know what that means? It's like, oh yeah, I had a miscarriage. Okay, but like, do you know what that means? Oh yeah, I had a C-section. It's a big deal. And so I hate when it's just like, we talk about it and it's like, oh yeah, like so-and-so did 3 rounds of IVF and people are just like, oh yeah, cool. Like, but the gravity and the seriousness and the involvement of what these things are, like the emotional toll, the physical toll, that is the piece that's missing from all these conversations. People don't understand how big of a deal it is. And us as women are not saying how big of a deal it is because, we just want other people to be comfortable and we feel like we can't take up space and talk about like difficult things that we're going through and, we should just like be quiet. And so that's why I love these conversations because it's like, no, like, let's talk about how big of a deal it is. Like, it's huge.
No, thank you so much for saying that. I think it is a big deal. And people are suffering in silence, but also working and parenting and being sisters and aunts and supporting friends. And, it's very layered. It's extremely layered. The fertility world, there's also so much pressure on society of like how many kids you should have and what you should. There's so many shoulds. You can't even figure out what your own wants are.
No.
There was like this period of time because we've been going through this for 3.5 years now where I was really caught up in the age gap of my kids. And I've had to do so much work in letting that go. But in that time, I've also had to be like, wait a second, like, I want to make sure I want this, like, because it's been so easy for me. I haven't actually stopped to be like, wait a second, do we want 2 kids? Like, I'm kind of in this journey, but let me just take a hot second to move back from it because the other piece is like, we're creating humans. I think people in this journey, we get so caught up in the outcome and then we forget the outcome is a baby. Like we don't forget it, but like your head's so down in it where
like you're just focused on the goal that is conceiving.
Yes. Or bringing home the baby safely, but it's actually such a crazy thing that's happening. And it's a life-changing thing. And I'm talking about this mostly from a secondary infertility lens, because that's how I've come to this journey. Obviously, I have a lot of clients I work with that don't have kids at home. It's a bit of a different narrative, but like, I just think that there's a lot of societal pressures that are layered into this subconsciously that can make things, it's important to take a step back and be like, why? I think asking the question still, why, is important.
For sure. And I'm a good example. I don't think people can catch it. Like if people don't listen to all my podcast episodes or like watch my stories all the time, they're like, wait, like, does she want a second kid still or not? And I'm like, I don't even know. Okay. But like you were saying with the age gap, like I am very mindful of that too. Cause in my mind, I'm like, I'm very set on only wanting one and like everything is great, but there is that worry in the back of my mind that's like, what if next year all of a sudden I'm like, no, you know what? Like we have a life change or like something happens and I'm like, oh God, like Milo's going to be 5.5 or whatever. And so I am still aware of the age gap. And I'm like, oh, because, my brother is 5 years older than me. My brother's 4 years older than me. My sister's 5 years younger than me. And so I'm like, oh, okay, like we're still in that, you know what I mean? It is something that weighs on my mind. And even though I'm like, no, I think we're just having one. Like, yeah.
Look, it's funny because I come from a place of my brother is a year and a half younger than me. And so I was like, we're very, very close. And I was like, my kids won't be close if they're not 2 years apart. Like I couldn't think that that could be something that existed. And I had to let go of just the fact that I had even control over what my family would look like. And that's the education piece, which is this idea that we can be like, oh, we want to have 2 kids. We're just going to do it when we want. And that's not there. And I think having the age gap actually has been a blessing because whomever we decide to have 2, like Ryder's just so independent. And I think it's one of these things, like when you talk about Milo and what you want, it's so important to stay true, I think, to what works for you because Milo's getting the best of you, and when you bring in a second child, you want to still make sure that they're getting that version of you. And if you're doing it for the kid, like for your kid, the intention changes a bit. And I think it's so beautiful and something very hard to do as women is just to take a step back and be like, how can I show up as my best self? If that's 2 kids, 3 kids, 1 kid, because that's what your child connects to, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm also big on people understanding what their capacity is, and it's not going to be what someone else's capacity is. And also like the vision for your life. Like I am a certain way in that when Milo was a baby, that was very difficult for me because I'm like a busybody. Like I'm like, go, go, go 24/7, like want to do all this stuff. And it was really hard. Well, I couldn't when he was younger. And now I'm starting to feel like we're almost getting a little bit of the life back that we had before having a baby. And then I'm like, oh my God, like, should I feel guilty about this? And it's like, no, like you're a person that has, wants and desires and like want to live a certain way. And it's okay that that looks different from somebody else. Like my sister-in-law doesn't want to have kids. And I was like, good for you. Like, because it's a lot, and she is similar to me in that, like, she's a professional photographer. She's very like entrepreneurial and like, go, go, go and travels a lot. And I'm like, yeah, like, what is your vision for your life? And if it doesn't look like what we are exposed to, like what other people want, like that's okay. But it is true. And we were talking a little bit before I started pressing record about a lot of people in my life, whether it be, and this is going to sound stupid, but like a celebrity or like someone that I follow closely and I'm really into, or like close friend, are either have multiple kids or are recently pregnant with their second. And I'm like, oh my God, like what's wrong with me? Like, why, like, should I be having a second? Like, why don't I want what other people seem to want and enjoy,
The assumption is that that's what they want, but we don't even know what even got them to that place, or if they've even living in a conscious level to even ask themselves if that's what I want. Like through this journey for me, it has allowed me to ask myself questions that I don't think were available to me. And I, in a space of not having any sort of adversity in my life, like in that way.
Mm-hmm.
The funny thing is that sometimes I see people in my life and they're like having 2 or 3 kids and they're like not really.
Yeah,
They're having a time over there. They're having a time. And is part of me like, would it be wrong of me? I want 2 kids. Like, I know I want 2 kids more now than before because I've had this time to be like, are we doing another round? And is that what we want? Like, it's way more intentional. And again, like, I'm not saying if you've been blessed to easily build your family and that's what you've wanted, that's amazing. I would pause to even ask yourself if you've really asked the question, if that's what you've wanted. Not that you're not grateful for it and you don't love your family, but I think that even the fact that we're having this conversation is a generation of women who are starting to ask the question.
Mm-hmm. What do I want? And I'll tell you right now, it starts when people leave high school. You're going to go to university? Why? Why are you going to university? What are you going to do with that university degree? Do you even have a plan? No, we just go with the flow of what we're supposed to do in society. We go to university. Like I'm telling you, I TA'd a lot of undergrad classes and I was like, half these kids should not be here. Their parents or they're going into debt like to get a university degree. And then we get married when we're about that age that we should be getting married. Whoever we're with at that time, let's get married. Oh, and then we're going to have kids. We're going to have a big wedding. We're going to spend 50 grand on a wedding. Even though like we have debt because everybody has a wedding and I got to put those pictures up on Instagram. Like, I'm sorry, like the whole thing. And it's like people need to pause and ask themselves like, why am I doing this? Is this what I want?
This is why I think it's actually so fucking beautiful. Sorry, I'm swearing.
Yeah, I swear all the time.
Okay, great. Part of it is actually not them, it's our parents' generation. Mm-hmm. So it's a gift that you are giving Milo right now, in my personal opinion, because he is going to have a parent and parents that you are going to say, Milo, let's sit down. Is this what you want? It's okay if you don't. Like when you're out of high school, you don't know to ask these questions and your parents are just scared of you not going in that direction.
Everybody else is.
Truly, I feel like our fertility journey has given me this gift of being able to create an intentional life. Mm-hmm. Everything is more intentional and I get to pass that down. And I think I'm a better parent to Ryder because of that. And so you are going to inject Milo with these questions and allow him to have his own answers or even like figure out how to have those answers earlier in his life. And I'm hoping this is just a generational thing that we can start to have and come down. And that's, I mean, it kind of comes into a conversation even around egg freezing because women now like have given up a lot of their careers or having more challenges building their family later in life because they want a career. So that is also a huge thing that I think is going to change in the next as we grow and build, especially in the fertility innovation world.
So when my mom had us, she even said, she's like, we didn't have a plan. It was just like, you have kids. Like she's like, I didn't even think about it. I'm like, she sees all the struggles that I go through and talk about and stuff. And she's like, oh my God, I don't even remember. Like, I'm pretty sure I just like blacked out, like having little kids because it was so hard. My dad was working out of the country. Like it was just like, you do it. Like taking care of yourself was not even like a thing at all. Like it was just a totally different world. Now, like you were saying, girls are pressured just as much as boys. Like there was like a shift where now it's like the majority of the higher percentage of university students is female. So it's like get that career, like, you know, you want to be independent and all this stuff. And then now we're staying in school forever, like myself included. And then you have your child in like your mid 30s, but now you're still struggling with the other pressure that has stuck around, which is like you build a family, you focus on your family comes first, like you're the default parent. So now you have both the being in school forever, getting that career that you always wanted, being successful in that like part of your life, but then also now, okay, having kids and being the default parent and the, you know, the person that runs the household and that at the same time. So women now, we're in this and it's starting to get a little bit better, I think, just because of people are being more vocal about it. But we have both sides of it now that we're trying to manage and balance and be amazing at both. And it's like,
It's so amazing because we are like amazing creatures, women. Like it's actually so bananas the things that we can hold. And we aren't taking, we're getting better, but we're needing to take some time to craft what we want. And I think it really does come down to, because we can do it all women can take on immeasurable amounts of things. And because of that, it's easier to just say we can do it, or that we want to do it, or I can take it on, or I can, whatever. And so it kind of just rounds out our conversation around having a bit of a higher level of consciousness to start to ask actually what you want to handle, and being okay to say, I don't want that. It's like, it's so it's so passed down. Like the shit is it's so passed down. It's such a hard, complicated thing to unravel. But it's great that we're having these conversations now. And I really think our children are going to benefit from it.
Mm-hmm. I think so as well. Do you ever feel any kind of, like my whole concern for my sister, because she struggled with infertility for a long time, so many tests, and like the added layer for her was that for all her fertility stuff, she had to drive from North Bay to Toronto because there's no fertility clinics or whatever you want to call it in Northern Ontario. So it was like, you want to do like the retrieval, the transfer, you have to go for extra tests, like whatever. It was like traveling to Toronto, getting a hotel room, like as if it wasn't already expensive enough. But my concern for her was like, ugh, I don't want her to go through all of this, then have a baby, which she's almost 1 now, little Poppy. But then feel like she can't talk about the difficulties of parenting or motherhood or, all the things that I talk about 24/7, because you worked so hard, you went through so much to have that child. And that was worrying for me, because when you aren't vocal about the struggles and things like that, it's very isolating and you feel alone. And I didn't want her to feel like she had to put on this like, oh, look at me, everything's amazing. Like because she went through all that. And do people that you work with or that you've talked to in your experience have those feelings? Yeah, that's like
it's a great question. It's like, so you're up all night for weeks on end, sleep deprived, but you can't complain because you worked so hard to get the baby, but you're feeling like shit. And then it's like, yes, this is one of the things that I think people are robbed of a little bit when we talk about in the fertility community, from what I follow and the conversations that I see. There is conversations around being robbed, which I could get into because that's not anyways, just around this idea of like, I don't have a regular pregnancy announcement, or,
yes.
I don't get to, like think like which gender I want, or like, there's so many societal things that make pregnancy this like big thing. I don't get the 12-week wait until I call all the people, or I've been suffering in silence for years and I'm scared to do it. It's no carefreeness in my pregnancy. There's no carefreeness.
The anxiety
is on a high. So there's that idea that people in this journey are getting robbed of that experience, and they're seeing everyone around them get these like beautiful things, and they don't, even when they are pregnant. But we also are robbed of the complaining in some way, and it more internally than I think externally. But it's something else that I think people that have gone through this feel that they don't have a right to. And it is so incorrect, but I like completely understand why. My feeling on this piece is learning to actually feel your feelings instead of getting emotionally involved with your thoughts that aren't true needs to be a practice in general. So when you become a parent of a baby that you've gone on a journey, you have these tools ready for you so you can move through your postpartum in a safer way. And I think, and why I'm doing the work I'm doing, why I'm so passionate about this work, is because people are going through this journey, and I call it like trying to manage the messy middle alone. There's no tools, there's no coach, they're not learning to integrate. So then they have the baby, and then they're like out into the ether with this trauma that they've actually haven't worked through. And so if we could have better support for people when they're inside the journey, then when they're in postpartum, they're like, no, I'm allowed to feel this way. I can complain. I know the tools for myself. So it's not as jarring because you've actually been learning this before.
I feel like it would be very worthwhile for women in that situation to be well versed in practicing self-compassion. And you know, I think a lot of people you have your baby now, and they would beat themselves up and be like, okay, like this is what you wanted, like get over it. Like, you know, you're living the life that you wanted. So why are you upset? Like, why are you this and that? And taking time to actually understand what they went through and appreciating that and having compassion for themselves. And I feel like self-compassion would be a big piece of that, and not like beating yourself up over, why am I not enjoying every minute? You know, like this is what I wanted.
What I wanted to say to that too is that biggest thing with clients that first come to me is this idea that they're only going to be happy when they have the baby.
Oh, and that's just setting yourself up for.
And then they have the baby and they're not happy, which makes sense because the first 6 months is a shit show. And they're like, wait a second, I gave up 3 years of my life and who I am for this. This isn't sunshine and rainbows. Yes, there is sunshine and rainbows in there, but it's not, you don't know how you're going to respond post-delivery, post-baby. So it is so important to understand that you're happy there, to learn how to be happy now. And that sounds like a big, tall glass of water to drink, but in the journey, as you're going through it, to understand that the happiness doesn't live at the outcome. So if we can start to do that work during the journey, and learning, part of that is learning self-compassion, is learning how to feel your feelings, is learning that, oh, I can go to a concert and dance my ass off and love the life that I'm in and then go get a retrieval. Like, you got to hold it all. And when you can start to live a life with the understanding that happiness isn't something you are going after, when you're in postpartum, it doesn't feel as jarring. You're like, this is my life. It's shitty. The kid's not sleeping. And I'm fucking so happy that I have this kid. They can go together.
Yeah. Okay, this, I would just like everyone to rewind and listen to that again and generalize that to anything in your life. Because as you were saying that, obviously I'm not in fertility treatments and stuff like myself personally, but I try and apply exactly what you just said to everything because I think that's how we live our life now. And we're missing happiness in the everyday. And like you called it, the messy middle. We live in the messy middle for the rest of our lives.
I just got goosebumps.
Yes. Oh, like once I get X amount of followers, once I get X amount of downloads. Well, until I'm like on tour doing a live show, like I'm very obviously work oriented. I always have been. Until, we live in this gorgeous farmhouse with property and, like always looking to the future. And, once I have that, then everything's gonna be great. And you know what? I can look back to when I had like 20,000 followers on Instagram, and I would look at people who had 100 and I would be like, oh, well, like if I ever hit 100, like, oh my God, like set for life. Well, I'm at 150 now and nothing has changed. Like I might as well have 20. Like you hit these goals, which you think everything is going to be amazing. Like that's the end goal, but then it just like furthers to something else. And so it's like, just enjoy where you are and yeah, like live in the messy middle, and it's not about an outcome. I love that because then you're setting yourself up for these expectations like, holy. And I used to do it even like in the day to day, like, oh, my husband's coming home from work. When he gets home from work, my life is going to change. Like, it's amazing. And then he comes home and I'm like, fuck, I'm pissed off. Like, it's the small things. It's the big things. I love that. Like, I'm going to get that printed on, on like a sign.
I say to my clients all the time, I said, let your fertility circumstance be the gateway to another level of consciousness and to a whole new way of looking at your life. These are tools that you're learning. They're not for fertility. Like, yes, we're talking about fertility in the content we're talking about it right now, but these are transferable. This is life skills. Like, people that are listening right now are going to not think I'm telling the truth here, but like, I'm legitimately grateful for this 3.5 years. I'm a way more present mom. I have tools that I would never have been able to access if it wasn't for what we are going through. And I am happier. Like, it has been some of the best years of my life, this learning and this work that I've been doing, because I would never, honestly, if I just had babies very easily and was in my PR corporate job and working up the ladder, I don't know if I would have doubled down on some of this stuff that I'm talking about. Like, there has to be a purpose for what we're all going through. And so I just want to say, it's like what you said. It's like, we're just talking about it in a fertility lens, but you could put anything in this. The other thing I wanted to say about your 150,000 followers, which is so amazing, is what are you doing to win? Like, what are you doing to celebrate that win? Did you do anything?
Oh my God. You know what? I need to celebrate things more often. And here's another thing. I look at people who like, they reach milestones or whatever it is, and then they have these beautiful posts with like these like
balloons,
these like long captions and stuff. And I was like, fuck, I suck. Like, I don't do anything like that. Usually it's my husband that notices first and he like posts something, which is great. Like, but you're right. Like, I don't.
Because it's interesting. It's like, and forget about the post for everyone else, but it's like, if that's a goal, right? Like, if 20K and then 100K and 100, those are goals. Like, you were living in the past really wanting that. And then you get it. It's only up to us to celebrate that, because it's only us that knows that that's the goal. So you know, like I say that in this context, if we're talking fertility, like people that go through retrievals, people that are cycle monitoring, and they find out that like I only have one tube due to an ectopic, and they had to remove my right tube, and obviously I don't ovulate. Obviously, I only ovulate on the right, so I had so much struggle in even getting to ovulate on the side that had a freaking tube. But the left side came to play, and I was like, what are we doing? You know, like, what are we doing? This is a win. Or in 2021, this is my favorite story, is that Evan and I had our second round of IVF, and we only got 2 eggs. They made 2 embryos. We went to get them tested, and they were not normal. And I was like, well, what are we doing to celebrate? And Ev was like, what do you mean? I'm like, what do you mean? I just went through a whole round. We've been waiting. Like, we still need to celebrate the fact that we freaking did that. And we went to some seafood place, like West Side by the lake. I got so drunk on champagne. I think I ordered everything on the menu. And it was one of my most favorite days in the journey, because it's so easy to skip it and be sad about that. But we tried really hard that
you put in round. A lot.
Yeah. And I'm going to go get drunk with champagne with my husband.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm saying. It's like, if we need to integrate. We need to figure out how, if we're going to keep managing the messy middle, why are we skipping the celebration part of it?
Yeah. Oh my God, so true. Today's my husband's birthday, but when we go for dinner tonight, I'm going to be like, nah, I'm celebrating myself.
Yes. Oh my God, please. But it's so, we have to.
Yeah. I love that so much. Okay. Before we end, I thought we could chat a little bit about how to support a loved one that's going through infertility, IVF, whatever it might be. And what are your tips for that? Because I'm sure lots of people listening are not going through it themselves, but I think everybody knows somebody that, you know, is going through something related to this topic. So what's your advice for people?
Well, my biggest advice is just to check in. It's actually not that serious in the sense of like, you got to do all of these things. But if you know someone, if you are privileged to know someone going through this, because there is people in your life that are going through this that haven't told you. So let me just say that. Just the fact that you know someone already puts you in a hierarchy in their life. So if you are privileged to know someone that's going through this, that means you're in an inner circle for them. And you don't need to do a million things other than understand that they're going through this every single day. So a check-in, I say, like, if you want to put a little like notification in your phone to just be like, check in with M, you know, and it's just, we're busy. I get it. There's no shame in an alert to check in with your friend. You know, I think there's something weird when I say that, and it's like, no, that is good friendship right there. That is like a great thing. I would just be like, hey, I don't need to know what's going on. There's no pressure to share where you're at. I just want you to know that I'm thinking about you and I'm checking in. Like, it can be as simple as that. And I think also it's the narrative of, I'm not here to understand. I'm not trying to understand. I cannot relate to what you're going through.
Can't fix it.
I can't fix it, but I'm walking beside you.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Did you see my cards that I did with Under the Stairs?
You know what? I think you told me about them when we met, but I haven't gotten to check them out yet.
Oh my God. I'm going to send them to you. This is one of them. I think you're going to love them. So it's for people that are going through
Oh my God, I'm
IVF.
obsessed already.
Yeah. So I'm showing her the card if you're listening and you're like, I can't see what you're doing. And then that's the inside. You are one of the bravest people I see.
Why are you asking me advice? What?
So
what advice do you have? What advice do you have? Because you are an unbelievable support. So I think it's more authentic to come from you.
I had no idea what all of what people went through until my sister was going through it for years. And I love greeting cards. And I was like, how the F are there not greeting cards for things like people going through IVF? And you know why? Because nobody talks about it, because it's not a thing. Nobody wants to acknowledge it. Nobody wants to be like, oh, I'm going through this. It's really hard. Like, so I made some cards for IVF. I made some cards specifically for C-sections, like people who have gone through C-sections, for like same-sex parents. Like, you don't see enough things like that. And I think just like, because I'm so close to my sister and I knew absolutely everything that was involved with going through IVF, I wanted to list it out, because like on this card, it says, so all the appointments, endless appointments, injections, ridiculous, ultrasounds, awkward conversations, sleepless nights, emotional highs and lows, the waiting. So now if you're listening and you remember what it felt like to try and get pregnant and like waiting for ovulation and then waiting the 2 weeks to like pee on a stick. So imagine that like times 1 million, because you're waiting for a million different things constantly and you're waiting for outcomes constantly. The bruising, the bloating. I've been talking about hormones a lot lately. Okay. So like imagine that times 100, because they're pumping hormones into their bodies. The transfers, the retrievals, the night sweats, the uncertainty. And yeah, and I just remember when my sister was going through it, just being like, holy crap, people just say I'm going through IVF and they end it there. You know?
So powerful. I mean, this is really why I started the business, truthfully, because you're doing it alone with no support and with no tools. Mm-hmm. And first of all, I just want to say that the fact that you understand that to the point that you could create that is so beautiful. The relationship that you had with your sister, not everyone has that, you know. So many people tell their sister's brother and they're like, yeah, I will support you. But you kind of went through it like secondary.
I was shocked. Like, I remember she was over here and she had to give herself an injection for something, and I should find that video and repost it, actually. Yeah, so I filmed her doing
I have like all of mine. I'm showing her all my needles from yesterday.
Like, she went through the whole process, and I filmed the entire thing, and I put it on like a fast speed to like go through to make a TikTok quickly. It did really well. I'm gonna find that and I'm gonna repost it. Maybe I'll repost it in April for that month. And I remember so many people commenting, being like, oh my God, I had no idea it was like that. And I'm like, I know you had no idea. Like, because unless you're in it and you're following accounts that are IVF focused, you don't know, you know?
This is my biggest thing is like, I actually ended up doing a talk at Capital One to all of their employees. And when I was having a conversation with the HR, they're like, okay, well, maybe we'll just do it for like our parenting group or whatever. And I was like, no, we have to talk to people outside. If we just talk, if the fertility community just talks to each other, we can't normalize anything. It is normal for me. You know what I mean? It needs to be coming from people like you, from other people that aren't talking about it all the time. You don't need to talk about this all the time, but to just create awareness for it with everyone else, because then support will look different. Yeah. Support will look different if you just know a little bit about how crazy it is.
Okay. Lastly, can you tell everybody about day one or is it day one fertility or infertility?
Oh, it's fertility. We're trying to move away from infertility, as the industry is doing a really good job, I think, right now, and trying really hard to step away from infertility. This is the first year that it's not Canadian Infertility Awareness Week, actually.
Okay.
Just because, like, for multiple reasons, but when from a psychological standpoint, when we say infertile, it's like you've made a stance that you're infertile, and it's actually not. We're all more fertile than we think. It's just some are more challenged than
so
others.
that's like a definitive word. Like,
yeah,
okay.
You'll see it. It's starting to shift. I mean, I still say it because it's an easy thing for people to just connect right into. But it's a cool thing that we're doing this year is shifting, just small little tweaks. And I just hope you don't mind. I want to just say one quick thing around the waiting. We do have to wait for everything, but I've tried really hard to take that word away from the people that I'm working with, because when we start to say waiting, it feels like we're putting something on hold. And instead of and these are just small, they're so small in my world, but they make such a big impact, because when I start to say, well, I'm waiting for results, or I'm waiting to get pregnant, or I'm waiting to do something, I feel so stressed. Like I can even you can see the way I'm talking about it. It feels like I'm clamping. And so that's why I say the messy middle, because it's like this, to your point, it's like, it's all the messy middle. And so the work that I do, just to answer your final question on day one, is I'm a mindset coach. I have a 3-month program where you learn things like I'm talking about right now, these tweaks, tools, reframes,
mindset shifts.
Yeah. Just to help you manage this, to help you integrate this into your life so you can still have a life. And it's a magical time here at day one, because there is no other fertility business right now that is doing this in real time. So I'm in my own journey. I will have a baby. Day one will exist, and I will be coaching from that place as well. But it's so interesting to have a coach who's actually still in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been a really beautiful connection that I've been having with people throughout the program, because it's like this see it to believe it mentality inside the program right now. You're bit.
Like living your work, basically.
Yes. And then I get to tweak things. I get to create things that I want because I'm in it. And so day one's a podcast where I share, my husband's come on. We've done, every time we do an update on where we're at in our journey, Evan comes on, which is really fun. I have experts and people sharing their story. And then we're a coaching business. I have one-on-one clients, or I have a group coaching environment, which is really, really cool. And there is no other offering like this. It's really, the idea is that you walk away feeling like you can manage this.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And where can they find you on Instagram?
Day one fertility across. Well, I want to say across my TikTok, but TikTok's hard for me.
You know what? Screw TikTok. I hate TikTok so much. It's going downhill. Like, okay. I hope they do cancel it and it gets taken away. Like, I really hope they do, because just like a little side rant before I press stop, like, every creator on TikTok, they're not showing their videos. Like, they want people to pay for views now. So videos that used to get like over 1 million views for me are getting now like 20,000. And videos that used to get like 40, 50,000 are now getting like 2,000. Like, it is ridiculous. And I don't consume TikTok anymore. Like, I'm totally over that app. Unless they change
you're making me feel better, because I'm like, I just can't, like, it's just, but I just can't. It's so much. It's like,
and it's not there's no feeling of a sense of community, because like I put out a video and the people that follow me and want to see my content don't even see it. It gets sent to like angry men in the US. Like, I'm just like, okay, like, I have no use for this platform anymore. But anyways, that's my TikTok rant. Well,
no, I appreciate that.
On that note,
me feel better.
Yeah. On that note, it was lovely to connect. Thank you for coming.
So lovely to connect. Thank you so much for being an advocate for this community. I really appreciate it.